HBO struck gold with their adaptation of the popular video game The Last of Us, and it should come as no surprise that the TV series has been renewed for a third season. Based on the eponymous game from Naughty Dog, The Last of Us is a post-apocalyptic drama set in a world besieged by an infection caused by cordyceps fungus that turns its victims into zombies. Taking place decades after the infection began, the game and show, which were both created by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, are a dissection of society as it responds to such a crisis, and how it has stripped away aspects of their humanity. Season 1 adapted the events of the first game, while the sophomore outing tackled part of 2020's epic follow-up game, The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Season 2 is set 5 years after Season 1, focusing on Joel and Ellie as they are living in some semblance of society, though cracks are already beginning to form in their relationship and their fragile safety. Despite Joel's shocking death, the show had ample story to tell through The Last of Us Season 2's remaining characters while setting up a powerful third season. The Last of Us Season 3 is confirmed. HBO renewed Season 3 before the Season 2 premiere. There's no denying that The Last of Us Season 2 was one of the most anticipated TV shows of 2025, and the lengthy delays only increased the suspense. The video game adaptation took the world by storm in early 2023 and was quickly renewed. That's why it wasn't particularly shocking that HBO renewed The Last of Us for Season 3 in April 2025, just a few days before the Season 2 premiere. The biggest question currently lingering over the third outing is its production timeline, and HBO is likely trying to avoid another long wait between seasons. Season 2's delays were partially unavoidable, and the 2023 Hollywood strikes put the industry on ice for most of that year. However, it still took more than a year and a half for The Last of Us to return following the strikes, so it probably won't have a fast turnaround regardless. With 2026 likely considered too ambitious of a release window, it sounds like HBO is aiming for The Last of Us Season 3 to release in 2027. Series co-creators Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann each released statements regarding The Last of Us Season 3's renewal. Neil Druckmann exited The Last of Us while Season 3 was in development. The HBO show also lost a key co-writer. When The Last of Us Season 2 ended, there was an expectation that Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann would jump right into Season 3. While production started, it was announced that Druckmann exited The Last of Us as a showrunner to focus on his other projects with Naughty Dog, the video game company behind The Last of Us. Here's the statement Druckmann released regarding his decision to step away from the HBO series. In addition to Druckmann, The Last of Us Season 3 is also losing Hallie Gross, the co-writer of The Last of Us Part 2 game, who also served as a writer and executive producer during Season 2. Following the movies, Mazin will serve as the sole showrunner for Season 3. However, when Druckmann explained why he left The Last of Us, he noted that he would still be around to shepherd it, meaning he's still involved to some degree. The Last of Us Season 3 cast details. Who will survive until Season 3? Predicting the cast of The Last of Us Season 3 is quite difficult because there are a ton of factors at play. First, it's unclear exactly how closely the show will stick with the game's story, meaning characters may actually live when they were supposed to die and vice versa. On the other hand, The Last of Us Season 2's cliffhanger ending pushed character fate reveals to Season 3. However, we know for sure that The Last of Us Season 3 will heavily feature Caitlin Dev as Abby, and likely other members of the WLF, like Isaac and Abby's crew. The upcoming chapter will also introduce new cast members linked to Abby's story, such as Lev and Yora from the game. While it's unclear if Season 3 will cover the game beyond Abby's time in Seattle, the upcoming installment has been confirmed to feature Bella Ramsey's Ellie and Isabella Merced's Dina in some capacity. That said, if the show follows the game structure, their appearances might be limited compared to Season 2, and kept to the latter half of the episodes when the story returns to the confrontation in the theater. One big moment that has loomed over the entire series is the death of Pedro Pascal's Joel, and it is a major turning point in the story of The Last of Us Part 2 video game. That moment finally came in Episode 2 of the second season, and it was appropriately emotional. Though Pascal starred in The Last of Us Season 2's flashback episode, he likely won't return for any future appearances unless there's a surprise in store. The presumptive cast of The Last of Us Season 3 will notably include the following. Based on the second season's final scene, it implies that The Last of Us Season 3 will continue to adapt The Last of Us Part 2 faithfully by switching to Abby's time in Seattle. The Last of Us Season 2's Day 1 ending sets up how the show will flip to Abby's POV during the same days that Ellie and Dina were in Seattle. The switch represents how the game flips to Abby being the playable character following Abby's attack on Ellie and her group in the theater. If The Last of Us showrunners want a Season 4, it suggests that Abby's POV will make up all or the bulk of the third season. That would mean that the events following the theater ambush would stretch out into a potential Season 4, closing out the arcs of the remaining characters. Still, Abby's own story will be intriguing, especially with how it involves the war between the WLF and Seraphites. Regardless of what happens in The Last of Us Season 3, there is still plenty of the game left to pull from. Will The Last of Us Season 4 happen? More details about The Last of Us' future have been revealed. There's no official word on HBO's decision to renew the series for a fourth season, but it sure seems like the wheels are in motion to plan out the story beyond the confirmed Season 3. Interestingly, Craig Mazin suggested The Last of Us needs Season 4 to properly finish the story, but he later stated that Season 3 would be longer than Season 2, implying that an extended third installment could potentially conclude the show.